welcome to a brand new episode of Constructive Criticism. I am back from the dead. Your host is here, Spencer Howell.
Hi, buddy. How you doing?
Hi, Mason. How are you, buddy?
Good. I realized I forgot to pull up one of the pictures from my cards for the Pick 2 set review we're doing today that I'm super hyped about, and so I'm pulling it up as we're talking. Found it.
To be honest, did you miss me?
Always, baby.
That's sweet. Did you miss me, Trey?
New podcast. Who does?
It's not a new podcast. It's
Oh.
episode 285, in fact. When I saw that, it kind of blew my mind.
I'm astonished.
Yeah, can you believe it's been that long, Trey? It only feels like 8 episodes.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this podcast has existed for 9 episodes.
For sure.
Well, but you know who has existed more recently is our newest patron, Joshi. Shout out to Joshi for becoming that newest patron. What?
You just said they just existed. I want you to know if you're a listener and you're not a patron, you exist in my heart. Don't worry.
Oh, that's not what I meant. He didn't exist as a patron.
Oh, I see. He didn't. I'm sorry. They didn't have.
He has new attributes tied to him as a person.
Yeah, they have brand new attributes. You're right.
Yeah.
They have all those perks of being a
You're
patron.
a different person tomorrow than you were today, Mason. That's what hashtag always improving is all about.
You're always the oldest you've ever been.
And as a patron, you get +1 charisma.
Wow.
Wow, this episode is starting out great. So, what?
What? I forgot that we don't do the segue immediately for the ad. I forgot old school CC. I was about to say, do you know what else is great? And then I was going to have Trey do this thing.
Oh, yeah. No, the ad comes later now.
Yeah.
The ad comes later. You know what doesn't come later is your need to be always improving. And this week, I don't think that we're going to do a always improving segment. I think neither of you guys probably planned on doing it. But I want to talk about a situation that happened at the 1K that I played in this weekend and get your guys' advice. Because I know that I handled it wrong, but I want to vent why I handled it wrong. So, you guys ready to give me... Ooh, Mason's putting glasses on.
Glasses on.
Okay. So it's round 3. So round 1, I was playing Blue Eye Control. Round 1, I beat Hogak. Round 2, I conceded to a friend that wasn't qualified for the championship that the tournament qualified for. And in round 3, I played against a burn player. A burn player wins game 1, loses game 2, and there's about I think there was 12 minutes on the clock when we began sideboarding. So a couple things. One, I had never met this player before. I had never seen him before. And so when that happens for me as somebody who, has been doing this podcast for a long time, who the website is tied kind of to my image, and also just as a person and how I want Magic to feel to people that I haven't met, I really make it a priority to be really friendly with all the players. I have a saying that I want every one of my opponents to have the match against me be their favorite match of the day, win or lose. And, if that means that they don't want to talk, that they just want to play Magic, that's what I do. If it means they do want to talk, I want to do that. And this player was interactive, and he was laughing. And we get to I win game 2 after, kind of him grinding it out. And he looks up immediately at the clock. And he sees that there's 12 minutes left. And then he takes about 3.5 minutes to sideboard 2 cards. And then he shuffles, and he stares at his hand for a long time. And he decides to mulligan. And he stares at his hand for a long time. And I'm like, dude, I can see what you are doing. And he interrupts me on his turn 1, his turn 2, his turn 1, my turn 1, his turn 2, my turn 2, his turn 3, my turn 3, all the way through every single turn of the game. He's interrupting me during things happening, asking me a question every single turn of the game. And we get to turn 6, and I play my land, and he accuses me of playing an extra land. And I was like, no, that's not true. Here's what happened. And I immediately raised my hand to call a judge. And he goes, you don't need to call a judge. There's no reason to call a judge. You're playing an extra land. It's only turn 4. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I was like, you already have 5 lands in play. He's like, oh, I played a land every turn. It's turn 5. And, it was a really frustrating experience because I could tell what my opponent was doing. And so I call the judge. The judge rules, I'm right. I can just prove that I'm right through this is what happened turn 1, this is what happened turn 2, this is what happened turn 3, and so on and so on. And then my opponent tells his side of the story and just has an extra spell in his graveyard. And the judge is like, where did that come from? He's like, oh, I guess I'm wrong. And the judge leaves and gives us 3-minute time extension, which is the amount of time it took for the judge to come over after my opponent was trying to get me not to call the judge. So later on in the game, I have to cast a Lyra that I have to cast early. It was a Baneslayer Angel, actually. It was not a Lyra. But anyway, I have to cast my Angel early because I need to just close the door and win this game as fast as possible because there's just a couple seconds left on the clock. And I don't think that I would have had to make that play had things not gone the way they were. My question for you is, if you think your opponent is slow playing you, how do you handle it?
So the first thing that I do is in going into that game 3, I try to give a friendly reminder like, hey, there's only 12 minutes left. Like, that's the starting point. And then if the reaction to that is what happened in the scenario that you're describing, at the time that sideboarding time expires, I'm calling the judge and asking about slow play. And just saying that, need to have somebody to keep an eye out on this and to take a look at it because, after a reminder as to how much time was left in the round, my opponent has taken more than the amount of time that's allotted for sideboarding.
Which doesn't exist anymore, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, there's not an allotted time for sideboarding anymore.
But still, just taking a look at that, it got 3 minutes, so they've gone 3.5 minutes to look at sideboarding from game 2 to game 3. That's unlikely to be legitimate decision making at that point. And just, you can step away from the table and just be like, Judge, I think my opponent might be trying to intentionally stall. I hate that that's the situation, but can you watch for slow play?
Sure.
And the unfortunate part about that is that I think that in that situation, it's always right to call a judge and it's always right to involve the judges. Involving judges in slow play is also one of the most consistently frustrating experiences that I have with Magic because oftentimes that doesn't result in anything happening, or the judge might say something about slow play and then the slow play just continues and the judge sits there while it continues. But I think that's the only real point that you can take at that time.
Yeah, it's awkward. So, like, even in situations where I don't think there's slow play involved, I can actually give you an example. So, round 14 of the SCG, we're playing a win-in for top 8 against Cat Light's team, and Cat Light and my teammate Kane are going into game 3, and I remind, like, everyone that there's only, like, 11 minutes on the clock or whatever. Like, we were taking a very long time playing. Like, that's what happens, right? Like, you're playing a win-in for a top 8. It's a team event. Team events already take longer. I just want to remind everyone, and, I mean, Kazu, like, Cat, they know how long rounds take, right? And like I clearly know, and Kane clearly knows, and Daniel clearly knows. And their teammate would know. I can't remember their name right now, but just remind people. And then honestly, when it comes to like slow play and that kind of stuff, it's awkward. I honestly just don't involve judges because I think judges are amazing at Magic, and I love judges a lot, but I think they're almost incompetent when it comes to slow play because they're in a really hard spot, and I get it. Like, they don't know that person's average pace of play, so they don't know that person just takes longer to make decisions. And if they hurry them up, that can A, slow that person down by stopping their train of thought, it B, frustrates them and slows them down, and C, they might legitimately be that slow player. So for me, I only get judges involved if I am positive that my opponent is trying to manipulate the clock. If I think my opponent is just slower, I pick up pace.
So one of the things is I kind of mostly agree with what Mason's saying here, and to me, it was like not until my opponent was like watching the clock and then interrupting me to like argue with me about lands and telling me not to call a judge. And I'm like, you're literally just trying to waste time at this point. So I went and talked to the judge after. He's like, you should have called me. And I'm like, what are you're going to say this guy's slow playing and DQ him? Because that should be the result because he's actually cheating because stalling is cheating. So if he's stalling, that's the result that should have happened. Do you think that you would have been able to do that? Or am I wasting my time by having the conversation with you?
Well, I think that response to the judge is not helpful either, for what it's worth. Like on the wanting to get feedback from us, I think that doesn't help you or the judge going forward.
This judge is one of my very good friends, for what it's worth.
That's fair, even in that case. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if that's a productive conversation.
And one thing that I took away from the way that the story was portrayed as well is that his actions going into game 3 were drastically different than what happened in game 2 and 2.
Different than the rest of the match.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's what I would have involved as far as involving the judge, just because then it seems to become there's intent involved at that point.
Yeah. If I was going to call a judge, I wouldn't call and be like, are we going to DQ this person or not? Or even afterwards.
No. That was not the conversation during the match.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Match,
God, I misheard you. I'm sorry.
Talked to the judge
That makes more sense.
and
I'm sorry.
explain my frustration.
I rescind what I said earlier. Gotcha. Okay.
I was like,
I thought you meant at the table, and I was like, well, that doesn't.
The
help
player
anything.
has no idea. I'm not saying their name. They don't know.
Okay.
Like they don't know I do the podcast. Like I'm just having conversation with you guys. This is an improving moment for me because it's hard for me to be willing to make a bad experience for that player. And after the match, he was really happy and like shook my hand, and I'm like, okay, man, and like I just wanted to get away from the table and be like, talk to the judge and be like, you need to watch this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is what happened.
I mean, I think that it's a good priority to try to make sure that your opponents are having a good experience when they're playing you, but that their experience doesn't come at the cost of you as well.
Yeah.
Right. Like if it means that you have to call a judge because it's the right thing to do from the integrity of the match and also for your tournament experience overall. Like you can't put their experience over your experience in every situation.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's what I came to realize in like the moment is that I was kind of giving my opponent too much power. But I'm glad that I'm not the only one that feels like calling a judge for slow play is almost a bigger waste of time than the slow play itself.
No,
it's hard.
I hope that the judging community can fix that.
I don't think they can. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think it's possible. And I think it's because it's only possible if there's like a known history with the player or the judge has been there the whole time and can see that. Because once again, the judge is in the awkward position of like they don't know the pace of play the whole time. They don't know that person's pace of play. And they are trying to like, you know what I mean? It's just so awkward. It's so hard to do.
Right. They don't generally have a point of comparison, and most of the time they're only getting that call because time is running down on the round.
Exactly.
And so there's the possibility of the person who's making the call to be possibly trying to angle shoot in some way because their time is running out on them. And so the judge is having to deal with a limited amount of information in a difficult situation. But it's still, one of the few options that's really available there.
Yeah. I feel like if it was something like LSV and you're playing against LSV and LSV is doing that, you would be able to pull it because everyone knows, we're like, is it you, Saito? Who I don't remember who it was, but the person that plays really quickly, like those players are known for having a quick pace of play. So like when you call a judge on them, like the judge knows. Also, if you call judge on Nassif, people know Nassif takes, his time thinking through lines. The judge is going to know that's Nassif's general pace of play. Now, should that be allowed or not is a different conversation to have altogether that we shouldn't get into. But it's just so it seems like a thing that only online can fix.
I think that you're right. I think it's a hard call to make. You know what's not a hard call to make is using our sponsor at Oasis Games. You go to mtgoasis.com to do that. But let's roll the ad, Trey.
Hello, fellow Magic competitor. If you're like me, and I think you are, then you are a loyal, law-abiding citizen, and you have continued to walk the path of righteousness despite being tempted at all times from the agents of Yawgmoth at every corner. And it was a great shock to learn that you were guilty of theft. I was as surprised as anyone to learn that you, yes you, have been stealing wins from other hard-working Magic competitors with every intentional draw that you've taken over the years.
Yes!
Up until now, I thought intentional draws were a smart equity play, but that's Yawgmoth just tempting me and you down the path of the devil. How could you fall so far? There's still a chance for redemption, Forsaken Soul, but you have to earn it. Head over to mtgoasis.com and use code CCMTG for 15% off your first order, and then you can use code WouldThatBeGood for 4% off every order.
Do you know, I think that would be good to not intentionally draw players. It seems like you're stealing from people, and going to jail and committing crimes is important to not do. Spencer's really somber because I think he had a friend intentionally draw a couple times, and it's just a hard spot. Like when you see people.
I just know that I am a dirty little thief. Both state championships I won, I drew into the top 8. Both. That means that I'm not a real state champion. I mean, I stole those state championships. That plaque behind me is bullcrap.
The real problem is not just the times that I intentionally drew, but it's the times afterwards that I dreamed of intentionally drawing again. The rush that I received was so great that I could hardly wait to get my hands back on another one of those one match points.
What's funny is, if you think about it, we're just real kleptomaniacs at the end of the day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really so all of Magic Twitter got that one.
Back to you as our sponsors, though, at Oasis Games, giving you that 50% off your first order. It's pretty amazing. I actually don't know that using the sponsor segment to make a
what point are you talking about, Spencer? I don't understand.
The best use of our sponsor segment, but I'll take it.
Spencer, we're talking about a very serious matter right now, and that's IDing in Magic tournaments, which is clearly the worst thing you could do to another person. But you know what's not the worst thing you can do, Spencer? That's you talking about your number one on our pick 2 set review, which I guess we should go over. So if you haven't heard,
what is a pick 2 set review, Mason?
I'm glad you asked. So the great people, rest in peace, of the Even Odds podcast came up with the best set review of all time, and they handed it down to us, the Lineage. And basically what happens is, instead of hand it down. Even Odds is dead. It handed it down to the next generation. Much like you will be on the inside if you ID. Either way, what happens is there are 5 categories, right? So we're still going to talk about 10 cards just like every other podcast really does, except we're going to talk about them in different lights. So instead of having like numbers 10 through 8 and like 7 be these cards that maybe see play but probably don't, we get to talk about cooler cards. We talk about them in a new light, and we also get to frame those cards in a light for you. Like we know when we put a card number 10 that means it's probably not going to see a lot of play, or maybe it's something that's unlikely to see play that we really want to see play. And we have to convey that to you. But when we have these categories, we get to immediately tell you that. So today's categories are Sleeper, UGG, Favorite, Hit, and I forgot one because I'm
Hopeful.
Hopeful, thank you. I'm
So,
cold medicine.
Sleepers
So
are
with-
cards. Oh,
Go ahead. I was just gonna say, what are those categories?
Yeah, so Sleeper are cards that like we think people aren't talking a whole lot about. The cards that like maybe below on price. An example of this in the past was Hogak. Trey got Hogak 100% right. It was a card no one was talking about before it came out. Trey was like, "Hey, look at this. There's this card. That's a Sleeper." UGG.
Even said what deck it would see play in. Go Trey.
Yeah. I believe he even said you'd have to rebuild Vine. Not even it would be in Vine. Man, those CC people. Then the UGG is cards that when they're played against you, you go, ugh. An example of this might be Teferi 3, or depending on where you are in life, Experimental Frenzy. Your favorites are obviously, these are just favorites of ours. They're cards we want to talk about. We're not sure if they're going to be great or not. I personally pick cards I hope are going to be kind of good, but they're just cards I really love, and I'm probably going to play too much of. Then we have the Hopeful, which are cards that we hope see play. It's kind of like Favorite, but it's more like they could miss, but we're pretty sure they're going to hit, but we're just really hoping they make it. And then finally we have Hits, which, as the name say, they're probably going to be cards that are going to define Standard. An example of this might be Teferi 5 or Experimental Frenzy. So
I personally, I don't use. It's funny that we don't exactly do things the same way on these, which is something we'll probably need to refine through time so that we're, having the same type of categories. For me, like favorites are like cards that I think are going to be like role players. They're like the favorite cards that, like, all right, because this card exists, I can do this. And then like for me, a hopeful is something that like I really want to play. Like whether or not it sees play or whether it could see play doesn't matter. It's just like the card that like this is the thing that I want to be playing.
Mhm.
And then a Hit to me is just a card that I think just without a doubt will see Standard play. Not necessarily to define the format, but just will be a part of Standard.
Yep. So, Trey, do you want to kick us off on this pick 2 set review?
Sure. What category would you like to start with?
As always, we don't sleep on the sleepers.
Well, my first sleeper is Agent of Treachery. Agent of Treachery is a 7-drop human rogue, so it's blue 5. It's a 2/3, so well below the vanilla rate on stats. And it says, when Agent of Treachery enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. And this card right now is 99 cents. It's a rare from the upcoming set, and it's a thing that I haven't really seen a lot of people talking about. But there are a lot of reanimation spells that are legal right now in Standard, and there's just a lot of different options of possible ways to do this and try to abuse it. And I think that there is something that might be going on with this, and that if we can find what the right combination of balance between getting the enablers and things going on in the reanimation deck plus the control elements to try to stay alive, like starting to just take things with this, or also just using this in like a Simic ramp deck. Like we already have Mass Manipulation and Entrancing Melody, and you're already going to be stealing other things, and if you have this stealing things and drawing cards, I think that it could be a role player in either of those 2 different kinds of decks, and I think this is a good option for a sleeper, especially at $1 a piece right now.
Yeah, I played with that card yesterday on the streamer preview event, and it was very cool. It was very powerful, very cool. It works very well with Barter and Blood too, because you can like if you get to cast it, you can play it and then it triggers. Then you can kill it off for the effect and bring it back immediately. So you're stealing 2 things, especially with a lot of mana there. I think the card's like honestly one of the best reanimation targets. I put a bunch of fatties in the deck, and those were like fine. Like it was nice to have some, but I think the ETB stuff is really where you want to hit because so many of the reanimate cards can like do other stuff as well. So I like this card.
Especially if you're stealing like your opponent's Cavaliers and then taking the die triggers and doing all kinds of other stuff that are going on with that.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I played against this card on my previous stream.
Oh,
Yeah, and one of the things that I thought about when playing against it was how interesting it was that, you know, I think Mason made a really good point with the ETB. By the way, the guy that I was playing against was
a Stone Cold.
What some of his cards did, so I don't
probably a
know
Stone Cold Master that's sick. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But one of the things I noticed is like if you go steal a 4/4 and your opponent's board is like 4/4, 2 and like a bunch of 2/1s or something, right? Like some medium-sized creatures, and you get a 2/3 and steal their biggest guy. Their biggest guy now blocks their next biggest guy, and this blocks their next smallest guy. So it immediately stabilizes you against basically any deck.
Yep. And then
What more would you want out of your reanimation spell than to give you card advantage and stabilize you?
Yeah, exactly. Or also another thing that's cool about it is like because the body is so bad, it becomes where your opponent can't attack, right? Because like let's say they're attacking in and you have like 3 cards in hand, right? And you haven't done much this game. It's reasonable they might have another reanimation spell. And so it's like I can't afford to like have them chump block and then replay this. Because once again, it's not that it's not like an O-ring effect where it's tied to the creature being there. Or like a Threads of Disloyalty. It is a straight up control magic. So
well, also not a control magic because that's an enchant creature also.
Oh, okay, my bad. I don't know which one I'm thinking of, but you get it.
Like bribery.
Bribery. Thank you. That's the one I was thinking of. Yep.
Yeah, but also too, like you can have situations, especially if there's games that are grinding out, where someone's working towards like ultimating a planeswalker. And while this is a high casting cost, it's like, okay, they get their planeswalker up high on loyalty, and then you just play this and take it and ultimate yourself. Like this takes permanence. Like the green-blue decks could have problems against like flipped search for Escanta. You can just take the land with this, and then all of a sudden you have that. Like this can do a lot of different stuff, more than just taking a creature in combat.
Next up, if I could go, my first one, Trey, is Flood of Tears. It's blue 4 for a sorcery. You return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand. If you return 4 or more permanents you control this way, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield.
Wait. Did you say free stuff?
Yeah.
I like free stuff.
This card seems literally insane and nobody's talking about it. Am I the only one that's like, what in the world? I did see Brian Gottlieb post a deck list with it today.
With Omniscience?
Yeah. Well, it has one Omniscience, yeah. But like, what?
This card's great. It's like you can get you just have River's Rebuke, but also
better.
Also, you just get to put your biggest thing back into play for free.
It's because it's not an instant.
River's Rebuke isn't an instant either.
River's Rebuke is one-sided.
Yeah, it's one-sided. That's the big thing for me. But like, if you're abusing the put into play the one thing part, or like the bouncing your stuff matters, it is better at River's Rebuke. It's like very strong.
That's true.
I was just trying to think of things you could do with it.
Why did I think River's Rebuke was both an instant and one-sided?
Probably because you've been
a lost game where I've cast a River's Rebuke, so I don't know that I've casted it.
Yeah, but I think that the pairing of this card with Omniscience is really good, right? Like if you can activate this part where you're getting to put something in for free, and the thing you put in for free is Omniscience, and then just replay all your stuff, you're not really going to lose that game, I don't think.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, it really breaks open like any type of mid-rangey or rampy mirror, where you're just like, okay, like we're both completely stabilized. We both have like 17 things in play. We're staring at each other here, and they're like, oh crap.
It does sort of play like a fair upheaval in that way, right? Where like normally with upheaval, you would be the one you'd want to put something in play like offloaded mana, and this kind of does that without resetting their lands. So that part is also like very like telling, right? When you can compare it to a card like upheaval. So
it's like a fixed upheaval.
Yeah, like a fair upheaval.
Are
there anything busted you want to do besides Omniscience?
Never fair.
Well, Also, there is a deck list floating out there. Ali Antarazi was streaming with a Omniscience Blood of Tears deck yesterday.
Okay, so it's not just me. Also, if there's a person that's gonna see a blue ramp card for rampy stuff that I also see for blue ramp, I wonder who that would be. Speaking of rampy stuff, what's your first sleeper?
Yeah, so I guess I'll stick around here since my two do go together. My first one is Cavalier of Thorns, which is 2 green, green, green for a creature elemental knight that has reach, and it's a 5/6. And when Cavalier of Thorns enters the battlefield, reveal the top 5 cards of your library, put a land card from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest in your graveyard. When Cavalier of Thorn dies, you may exile it. If you do, put another target card from your graveyard on top of your library. So this is the first of the Cavalier cycle. We'll be talking about these a lot today because they are all over my list. But the Cavalier of Thorns is kind of like a weird grindy card. It plays like a Primeval Titan where it like goes and grabs you some lands. Like instead of just having extra mana for your powerful X spells or Fight with Fire, have been things that I've been doing with that between like Mass Manipulation and Fight with Fire. It's very powerful there. And then the fact that it buys back something that you could have milled over or another grindy card, I found to be very powerful. It can't go infinite with like a fine finality, but I think still just getting back a powerful spell that you might have, like maybe a Chandra, maybe even a Risen Reef, maybe a different Cavalier than a different color that you milled over, maybe even just a Cavalier that you milled, another green one. I think this card's really powerful. And the only person I've heard talk about it is Brian Gottlieb on the Game Podcast. And I don't know. I think this card is. I think it's honestly one of the best cards in the set.
This is the card we talked about on the Arena Decklist podcast this week. One of the reasons is because really excited. He was really excited for it in Bant Ramp, and after playing against it yesterday, I don't disagree with him. I think the card fits really well. The deck already has kind of a medium aggressive deck matchup, and that 6 toughness is going to go. It's going to go all the way. Like.
Yeah, the stat line on this thing is really important. Like a 5/6 is really hard to kill right now, and it blocks all the flyers.
Yeah,
like
it blocks 4 mana Rekindling Phoenix really well.
Yeah, Phoenix, Kefnet, always kills a Drake. Sometimes Drake doesn't kill it, but most of the time if it's attacking it will. Like it's very strong and it's very good at grinding. And I think it also the cards around it have like this shell. Like the fact that it's an elemental is going to matter. We're going to talk about that more later. But like there's like this shell of a deck that like always gets to play Magic, and that kind of stuff's normally really powerful. And this lets you replay your big stuff.
Can we call this Small Evil Titan?
Ooh, I love that. These are like these are the closest things to like the Titans that I have seen when it comes to like a cycle that does something. These feel like the closest in power level.
Not the 6 mana 6/6s from Magic Origins.
Nah, those weren't strong enough in my opinion. Like they're
not strong enough to be called Titans.
Yeah, like these are closer to Titans in my mind of like when it comes to power level, specifically.
I won a lot of games with some Souls, baby.
So. I remember playing Soul of New Phyrexia a bunch, and I remember playing a little bit of Theros, but I don't remember the other ones.
I played Soul of Theros. That's the one that I played the most.
Okay, that one was dope for sure. Also, the art was chef's kiss. My other sleeper, since we're going to snake back around here, it also involves this card, is Omnath, Locus of the Royal. For 1 green, blue, red, you get a legendary creature elemental, 3/3. When Omnath enters the battlefield, it deals damage to any target equal to the number of elementals you control. And then whenever a land enters the battlefield under control, put a +1/+1 counter on target elemental you control. If you control 8 or more lands, draw a card. So Omnath comes in, it always at least pings. Most of the time it's going to shock something. That's very powerful. You can hit planeswalkers, hit the face, maybe clear up a little creature that's been on the board earlier. And then as you play land drops, it basically has landfall +1/+1 counter on something. And at worst case, it's just itself. And then if you get to the late game, the lands start tireless trackering, essentially. So I really like Omnath. It was a card that I was like kind of low on. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to try this with a streamer event. Jerry seemed pretty high on it. And then played it, and I was very impressed. So this card seems great.
I feel like that's a spoiler, Trey. All right, I'm going to make a prediction.
Okay.
And this card is not on my list because I didn't have time to edit my list much before today.
All right.
But this will go down as one of... I have a prediction that this will go down as one of my top 10 favorite cards of all time.
Yeah? You think so?
Like, without a doubt. I think... I mean, there's like reasonable doubt that like the deck isn't good, but... wow, I have not had so much fun streaming in my entire life, like ever than I did late last night. And this card was a huge reason why. I think this card, played in the right deck will, getting. If you have this in a Risen Reef in play, like the interaction between the two of them is like pretty insane. Uh, you know, because if you put the land in play, that you get to make something else bigger, and when you put this in play, it already triggers off the Risen Reef pretty a high percentage of the time. It's Oh my gosh, guys, it's so fun. I am in shock that this card. I had this card kill X5s. It really stabilizes the board in a whole new way by getting your other creatures bigger, making every part of your deck do something different was really cool.
For any of the listeners who don't know what Risen Reef is, what is Risen Reef?
Is it on anybody's list?
It's on my list. I have the card pulled up here. So it's 1 blue-green for a creature elemental 1/1. When Risen Reef or another elemental enters the battlefield you control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it on the battlefield. Tapped. If not, put that card into your hand.
So when I read this card, I thought this is bad Oracle mold or Coiling Oracle, and now I've played with the card, and this is good Coiling Oracle.
Yeah, this card is very, very strong. We're gonna talk a lot more about it later, but just for the sake of knowing what why it matters, like the Cavaliers being elemental matters, why Omnath being an elemental matters. My list is basically dedicated to the elemental deck. I think if there is going to be a deck that comes out of M20 for the current standard, it's going to be elementals or vampires, and my heart says elementals might just be one of the best decks in the format, like a top 5 deck.
I am currently 80% to play an elemental deck at GP Denver in 2 weeks.
Dang,
That's awesome.
Oh, that is.
Well, I mean,
2 weeks.
Omnath does everything. It slices, it dices, it draws cards, it'll make your bed. It's pretty good.
Also, it wins board stalls because it goes face. Like I have domed people for like 10 on a turn.
Well, and that's no small thing. The fact that it's any permanent, right? Because a lot of the times when you have this kind of effect, it's like creatures, or even if it's creatures of planeswalkers. But like this, that there's never a fail rate.
You can kill your own stuff too.
You can just play it and hit face.
I killed a Cavalier of Fire off stream, and this domed them for like more damage than it would have been to hit them in the face. So there's a lot of cool stuff. Spencer, what's your next sleeper?
I haven't listened to the game podcast yet, so I can't say if they said anything about this, but I haven't seen anything about this literally at all.
Mm-hmm.
But my next sleeper is, I'm not going to get this name right, Mu Yangling Skydancer.
Okay, that's
Mu Yanling Skydancer.
Oh, there's no G. It's Yanling.
Right, yeah.
There we go. Oh my gosh, this is blue 1 for a planeswalker that comes in with 2 loyalty. It comes in with a +2 to protect itself until your next turn. 1 target creature gets -2, -0 until end of turn and loses flying. -3, so the next turn you can create a 4/4 creature, and then -8 is you get an emblem with islands you control have tap draw card. All right. So first of all, the plus ability is super underrated, as I learned once upon a time with a 2-mana Jace card. That ability is actually just great protection for some reason, and I've always been like, why is this so good? Obviously, being able to make multiple 4/4 flying creatures throughout a game is just broken, and its ultimate wins the game. No one's talked about this card. I think it because Mono Blue is on the decline, but I don't even know that this card has to be in Mono Blue. I think this card will just find a home, and I think it's one of the most powerful cards in the set, and also just a really, really, really powerful 3-mana planeswalker.
Yeah. What's really weird is that normally if you had a 3-mana planeswalker like this that you played and it couldn't immediately minus and make a creature, it's like that's a downside. But because of the way things have shaped up right now, that might actually create interesting play patterns that work to its advantage in the standard right now because of 3-mana Teferi. Like if you are on the play and you play this first, and if you had the ability to minus and make a 4/4, you probably would. And then they play 3-mana Teferi and bounce your 4/4, and you're at low loyalty, you lost your creature, and they got to draw a card. But now, because you play plus, then they have to decide whether or not they want to play their Teferi now, and then minus for less value than what they could have, and then be facing down a 4/4. There's a lot of really interesting decisions that happen, only because the card makes you do it. Like you can't make the 4/4 immediately.
Almost like they're like, don't mess up.
Right.
It's funny that the card makes interesting decisions because it removes decisions from you. It's like by the lack of choices, you now have more choices
for your opponent, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying that's a funny it's like a learning moment for design too, right? Where it's like you can restrict design and still have interesting decisions that come up from it.
Right, because it makes all the meaningful decisions for everybody else.
Yeah, I would also say that this card seems very good out of the mirror for Mono Blue. If the deck got a couple pickups in this set, including this, and this seems like a card that would break open the mirror. Like,
Yeah, Spectral Sailor is another one that seems pretty good for the deck.
yeah, so like losing flying is like the huge part there. So, yeah, I think the card's
It's way
powerful.
better than Jason in the deck for what it's worth. If you were ever playing Jason that slot,
R.I.P. Jace Cunning cast away forever. Now that this is here.
Yeah,
for
Jace,
real.
Jace wasn't very. Jace was for Esper, but it wasn't even very good against Esper. She probably just want this for other matchups, for like make a Rekindling Phoenix lose flying, so your
I
trickster
actually-
can block it.
I actually just don't think this card is very bad against control.
So you just think like a 4/4 every.
I mean, if you
turns?
get 1/4/4 out of it, and then you just keep pressing it, and if they don't deal with it, you either win the game or you make another 4/4. Like, a 4/4 every other turn is totally fine, right?
I guess it's fair. I was just thinking that I would want.
I guess the second one takes 2 turns, but
Yeah, it's a little while for the second one. It is awkward because control decks have less. They have no counter spells, to be fair, and they're all removal. So having creatures that can like stick and come back over and over again is a little bit worse. But it's still like infinite 4/4s until they find an Elder Spell is a problem. So I think it's powerful.
yeah, it's this. No one has talked about this card. And I'm like, this is like one of the better 3-mana planeswalkers that I've seen in a while. It does everything that you want in a 4-mana planeswalker, and it costs 3 mana.
Yeah, I mean, I think this card is under the radar from a lot of people. The only thing I have seen is Kevin Jones as the only person I've seen talk about this card.
Daddy.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the last sleeper. We have it's. I mean, it's the middle of the night, so maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, this one will definitely take you by surprise. This is Night Pack Ambusher. It is green, 2. It's a wolf, so it's a good boy.
Wolf.
Even though it doesn't look like a good boy. It's a
They're all-
4/4 flash.
To be clear.
4/4 flash. Other wolves and werewolves you control get +1/+1. And at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't cast a spell this turn, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. I think this card's awesome. Having 4/4 flashes, like that is a substantial stat line by itself and can cause a lot of nightmares for combat. And what's really interesting to me about this card right now is this is coming into a format where Frilled Mystic is also available. So you can have a deck that has Frilled Mystic and this, and you're passing the turn with mana up, and your opponent's now having to make hard decisions, which is back when fairies was fairies. One of the reasons was if your opponent had 4 mana, they had a lot of different options at that slot of what it was that was going on. Were you going to get Mistbind clicked? Were you going to get Cryptic Command? Were you going to get a draw spell? Like what was going to happen during that time? And you have to try to play around a lot of different stuff. And this creates a lot of interesting options. And it also incentivizes you to play flash cards because if you just don't play stuff on your turn, you get 2/2s. And this card, I think, if there is something with the Bant Flash deck or even just like a green-blue deck, this card is a huge tool to make that deck relevant.
Yeah, this card was going to be on my hopeful list before I changed it. I think this is one of the cards that I really hope impacts Standard in a meaningful way. I think something like Blue-Green Flash or Bant Flash being a part of the metagame is really interesting. It's weird. I mean, it's weird that they would do this and print Teferi at the same time, but
Yeah, that's my only problem with the card is Little Teferi. But if the format can push Little Teferi out, it's obviously very strong. Like,
yeah. Or we can just ban it because we've already banned a worse version of the card. Just saying.
well, if I was gonna ban this card, it wouldn't be because it's the worst version. I'd ban it because it's not fun to play against. I find it incredibly irritating. I feel like I'm not playing the game I love. But that's
You play
the
Teferi?
yeah.
Yeah, it's just the worst thing that's ever existed.
It also makes all these weird field bats with people where I'm like, no, you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah,
It's like-
I mean, it does.
Yeah.
It creates problems. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about that.
But the Wolf
no,
Pack
what
is
doesn't
cool.
create Problems is Good Boys. Good Boys never create problems. They're just fun and a good time. And this is one of my favorites, Trey.
Yeah, I think this card's great, and it's a thing that like if you're playing a card like this kind of a card in a deck, you're going to be playing a lot of other creatures that hopefully you're able to pressure planeswalkers in a meaningful way.
Yep, for sure. I think the card is strong. Like if you get under Little Teferi too,
Yeah.
via Llanowar Elf, which this deck would probably play, you can
Right.
maybe kill the Little Teferi and pass the turn back.
And then there was a time when we played 4-mana flash walls. Like
Okay,
Gloomveil was a 4-mana flash
all
wall.
right, calm down.
I'm just saying.
Oh
All
my
I'm saying
gosh.
is I've played a lot of Naked Restoration Angels in my life. And
That card I can get behind playing naked. Let's go. 3/4? Get the beats on. Plumeveil? Let's move on.
Plumeveil was hot.
Yeah.
Take that, Kipkin.
Restoration Angel is like so good, by the way. That card's insane.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk
So
about
what you're saying is this is the green Restoration Angel. Okay, Mason Clark has said Night Pack Ambusher is the green Restoration Angel. All right.
I'll say that.
Everybody note that down.
Deal.
Trey, you mentioned pressuring planeswalkers, and Mason and I have already mentioned the feeling of ugh when we talked about Teferi Time Reveler. Let's talk about your ughs that pressure planeswalkers. We actually already mentioned the first one.
Yeah, it's true. So we won't have to dwell on this for very long. But as I indicated, Omnath, Locus of the Royal, having played against this card even for just a small amount of time so far, I mean, when your opponent resolves it, it is groan-inducing, most assuredly, because you have to do something about it. And you can be getting pressured by things that are bigger creatures that might be hurting you, like Cavalier or something else. But you can't leave this card around. It just takes over the game because everything they draw a land, they get more cards. They draw an elemental, they get more stuff. They just get too much stuff out of this card being around.
Yep, 100%. I mean, I had nothing more to say. I said so much. Is there anything you want to say about the card that you maybe forgot?
Other than it was going to end up being one of my top 10 favorite cards of all time. No, I'm kidding.
Sometimes you think of something and you pass the stick on. Spencer, what's your first?
The first card on my list is, of course, Seraph Skyblade. It's a white.
I like the of course, by the way. You already know this card's coming in to kill you.
It's a 7/7 flying angel. You can pay white and tap up to 4 creatures you control with flying rather than pay its mana cost. It's got flying, it's got lifelink, and other creatures you control with flying have indestructible. I don't even think this card is good, but I'm going to lose to it. I'm going to lose to it so many times, Mason.
I lose to it a lot. It's like Loxodon, but
No, it's not. It's not like that because that's a good Magic card that does something that's important and is like a reasonable thing to put in your creature deck.
Whoa, if my deck's all 1/1 flyers, I'm putting this in. Get 'em.
Yeah, 7/7 flying lifelink. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of lifelink.
It is. Huh?
So, just to be clear, if this card is good, it's really, really, really good. And
Yeah.
even if it's not good, it's still going to kill me. I'm still going to die to it.
Yeah, 7/7's a lot of power. You're gonna lose this card a lot, Spencer. With their favorable wins in play, it's gonna be an 8/8.
The comparison that I just thought of when you were talking about that is this card's not very good, but you're going to lose to it, is Captain Lannery Storm. Where you're like, why are you playing that over other 3-drops while I die to it?
Yeah.
It's so annoying. It's a 7/7 flying lifelink creature for 1 mana.
It's really strong.
It's really powerful.
What? All right. Anyway.
And it has a name like a makeup store. So I like that.
Yeah. We'll get back to that one post-show. I'm curious as to why that's something you are a fan of. Do you know what I'm not?
I think it's funny. I don't know. That's where I'm at.
You know what I'm not a fan of?
Tell me about it.
Chandra Awakened Inferno.
Why don't you want Green Red Escape Shift to have nice things in Modern? What's your problem?
There's so many Chandras. Which Chandra is this?
This is a 6-mana Chandra.
Okay, good.
That is 4 red for a legendary planeswalker Chandra. This spell can't be countered. Its first ability is +2. Each opponent gets an emblem with at the beginning of your upkeep. This emblem deals 1 damage to you. -3 Chandra Awakened Inferno deals 3 damage to each non-elemental creature. Elementals. -X Chandra Awakened Inferno deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker. If a permanent dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead.
I won a lot of games with this card yesterday, man. A lot of games with this card.
Yeah, this card comes on the battlefield, and it immediately... So if you're not playing an elemental deck, it probably clears your board. If you are playing an elemental deck, it probably kills your biggest elemental. So it's going to answer your creatures either way. It's going to kill their big planeswalker. Also, because it can't be countered, if their Teferi is at 5 or less loyalty, you can kill it and keep your Chandra. If it's at 6 loyalty, it's to kill a target Teferi. The big one, obviously, there. And then with +1 makes it so you have to have a win condition in your Teferi deck. No longer can you play a deck where it's just Teferi looping itself. If you play this card in your deck, you cannot lose to that strategy. And I like to loop my Teferis.
So as somebody who's probably looped more Teferis than you, I'm really glad this card exists. I don't think I should be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you should be able to do it either, but I enjoy doing it. There's a
I mean,
difference.
so do I. I don't think I should get to.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
surprised this is your UG. This is one of my hits. I guarantee you this card will see play, not just in standard. I think this card fixes a lot of problems in Volakut, because it recently in the blue eye control matchup has actually become not as good for green or red Scapeshift as it used to be. It used to be like, knock it out of the park, bye. Like, you can't ever beat me. They produced Field of Ruin. They unbanned Jace the Mind Sculptor. They played a different configuration of counter spells and more counter spells. And the matchup has just gotten a lot worse. It's still probably in green red's favor, but I think it's a lot closer to 50 than it used to be. And this card does not. It changes all that. All of that is gone.
yeah, I mean, it's a really big thing. The reason my UG is like it's going to kill me a lot. Like I'm going to go UG. They played their Chandra. Also, you're going to be at like 2 life, and you're going to be like a top deck war, and they're going to play this. And you're like, well, I have to kill this, or I'm dead. Actual next turn cycle, and then even if I kill on my next turn, I'm only allotted 1 more turn, barring some amount of lifelink. So, Chandra is UG. The card that I have to go with that, as I'm snaking back around here, is Planar Cleansing. 3 white. Destroy all non-land permanents. I like to dirtle. I like to not do anything sometimes. And this card says no to that. It kills all the planeswalkers. I'm going to have all my sweet planeswalkers. I'm going to be taking them up and doing cool stuff. And then my opponent's going to clear the whole board. And I'm going to be very sad.
You both have that as your UG.
This is also my UG. This is a reprint for anyone who doesn't know. And when this was previously around, I lost to it a bunch. So I know that I'm going to lose to it a bunch again, because the type of stuff that I'm going to build is just going to lose to this card.
Amen. Spencer?
Yeah, I think Planar Cleansing existing as a safety valve is really good, considering the format that we're just coming out of, and I'm happy that it exists.
Sure. But when you're playing the deck that loses to
It's more of an UG than Elder Spell. Like, come on.
Well, Elder Spell's not in this set, so
That's
I can't UG Elder Spell right now. Or
Yeah.
I would UG Elder Spell, and then I would UG Planar Cleansing.
Well, also, my sweet Esper deck that does nothing but incremental card advantage over time that everyone plays can diversify between creatures and walkers, and if you draw an Elder Spell, you can still sometimes lose. But now, if you're willing to pay 6 mana, you won't lose to the split.
And
So.
everything burns.
Yeah, everything burns, Batman. So,
My next UG is 1 black for Scheming Symmetry. It's a sorcery, and you choose 2 target players. Each of them searches the library for card and puts it on top of their library. All right.
2-headed giant all-star.
You might
Target
ask
each other.
You might ask yourself, Spencer, this card seems terrible in standard. Why is this your UG? And it's like, I saw this card and immediately thought, ugh, why in the world? Why in the world does Lantern get this card? And everybody's like, Spencer, it's fine. Like, you need 2 mill rocks. And it's like, sweet. I'll just cast it when I have 2 mill rocks.
Well, you don't even need 2. You only need 1, right? You just mill
Right,
them.
but then they get a free draw.
Oh, sure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can also use.
use.
Yeah. Listen, I don't know if it's obviously good in Lantern, and you're going to lose to it because Lantern uses that card really well. I'm arguing about that card because I'm seeing weird things happen in Standard, and I'm not supposed to lose to this. Like, that's the card where it's like, no, that's supposed to be a trap, and you're supposed to learn about, like, slow tutors. Yeah, that card's going to be very annoying. I saw Yo-Man streaming Bolas' Citadel today, and I could already see myself losing to it at the UG, where it's like, all right, I'll tutor my Disenchant. Nice deck. And they're like, actually, I got Wild Growth Walker, and I have Path of Discovery, so you lose? And it's like, oh, cool. I lose.
Yeah, this in Bolas' Citadel also really powerful. It's just, I'm not about this card, fam. This ain't it. This, no matter how much play it sees, the second that I lose to this, I'm gonna be texting Michael and being like, "This was a mistake, bro."
But can we talk about how the art's dope? Because the art's really dope.
Yeah,
that's true.
The art looks like the tattoo I'd see on someone's calf at a Magic tournament. And I'm going to see it at someone's calf at a Magic tournament now.
Inevitable result is inevitable.
Yeah.
Your first favorite, by the way, Trey, is one we've already talked about, Flood of Tears. Why is it your favorite?
Because I like putting stuff into play for free. I like casting big dumb blue spells. I like doing all of those kinds of things. I have played Omniscience in multiple formats. I played Omniscience when it was in Standard the first time. I've played it in Legacy a lot. and I like doing that kind of thing. And the idea that this gives me a way to possibly abuse that and do some shenanigans in standard, I'm all about it.
Cards going to be cool.
I love it. I mean, obviously, I thought it was a sleeper. I'm really excited to try this one out and out myself. So
You can blank your gift of paradises to get more life, is what I thought of between our last time talking about this.
So good.
Dirtle.
All right, so we'll go to my first favorite, and I think that my first favorite will surprise people because I don't think they expect something like this from me, Mason.
Right.
But my first favorite is God's Willing. This is a reprint. It's 1 white for an instant, and if God is willing, you can target a creature you control, and it gains protection from a color of your choice until end of turn, and then you scry 1. So this, I still wish this was Brave the Elements. I think that card should be in standard a large portion of the time.
It's a all white creatures gain protection from X.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, continue.
But I think this card is really, really powerful and enables lots of different things. The Scry one is really good in letting you play this in your aggressive decks to protect your creatures. In a format like the current standard one, with so much targeted removal, I think this is a slam dunk in white weenie decks. Like the last, obviously the where it saw the most play was in the what did they call? What was the
Heroic?
Heroic. Thank you.
Yep.
It was in the heroic decks, but I think even without the heroic as a mechanic, this card could easily see 4 of and 3 of play and be a major role player in different style of decks.
Well, I mean, there was the feather deck, right, that was showing up towards the end of the format here. And in that feather deck, you already only had to play around the 1 card that gave their creature indestructible. But now they have the possibility of playing 2 versions of that. You have to have 8.
Would play 4 of this in that deck.
That's right. You play 4 God's Willings. You play 4. I don't, Mason, what's the name of the other card?
Sheltering Light.
Sheltering Light. So now they get Sheltering Light. They get God's Willing. They can cycle through their deck with Feather, and you make it almost impossible to ever kill any of their stuff because you oftentimes get in a situation where you just have to check that deck to see if they have Sheltering Light. Be like, well, if they have Sheltering Light, it can literally never win. And now they have possibility of having 4 more cards that have a essentially similar effect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge fan. I think that having these kind of cards in standard, these cheap answers, I like to call them, just makes for better decks and more fun gameplay. Jason, your first favorite is Cavalier of Flame. This is one of the cards that I got to watch a little bit yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Mason, what does Cavalier Flame do?
Well, just before we move on, I know we're trying to get quickly through the cards. God's Willing also great in that deck because sometimes the board can get stalled, and that breaks the stall.
That's true. Yeah, giving protection from a color to attack there is really good.
Yep. Cavalier Flame is 2 red for a creature elemental knight. It has 1 red. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn, which is a cool little factoid. When Cavalier Flame enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. When Cavalier Flame dies, it deals X damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control, where X is the number of lands in your graveyard. It's a 6/5. I don't know if I said that or not. Basically, I really like this card because it enables Reanimator strategies while also being kind of cool with some self-mill stuff, like works kind of well with the green Cavalier. Long story short, this card just seems really fun to me, and I think it probably might be one of the best cards in the set, just like I think of the green Cavalier. And I think I'm going to play it a lot, even if it's not. It's just such a blast. It does so many cool things, and I really like the idea of milling myself out, and then like my knight becomes a 6/5 that would kill you in a couple turns, will kill you if you block it. Or if I sacrifice it to like Barter in Blood, then get it back and kill him again. So I love this card. I think it's a lot of fun.
No shout out to our match?
Oh yeah, like, I destroyed Spencer with this card, and there's no proof of it.
You lost!
That's not even true. I clearly won that game. My other favorite, maybe I lost.
Yeah, you did lose.
I was sick. I was on cold medicine. I didn't realize all my creatures gain haste, or they gain haste, period.
It was great. Mason cast Escape Shift and put 22 zombies into play, and then attacked with just his Cavalier Flame.
Yeah.
And I was like, why didn't you give your creatures haste?
Yeah.
And Mason's like, what are you talking about?
I built like 40 Cavalier decks with the red one, and I never noticed it gave all your creatures haste before. Card's really good.
It's really good.
It plays really well. Also, the fact that you normally want to discard your extra land, so it like plays with itself very nicely. It's hot. Another card that kind of works on the same line. I really like the reanimation stuff. And I really like the elemental stuff. This set is Tombbound Lich. It's 1 blue-black for a creature zombie wizard. It has Death Touch, Lifelink, and whenever Tombbound Lich enter the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card, then discard a card. 1/3. This card seems great in any sort of reanimator strategy. Excuse me. It holds the board down and gets to attack in a lot, right? Like your opponent basically has to chump block it or trade some good creatures so you don't loot. Through obviously enable a reanimator strategy, and the fact that they got around that by making it also have an ETB that does that. Normally, creatures like this wouldn't have that backup clause of an ETB, so it always at least enables it. So between this and Charter Course, I do think there's a blue-black reanimator deck. So
Yeah, and just want to be clear too that they can't just chump block it. It's got Death Touch. So I mean, if they're blocking it, you're just abyssing them every turn.
yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. My bad. I did a poor job of conveying that. But yeah, also Lifelink is cool there too. Like
I think one of the things that outside of Teferi, I would say there's very little mistakes by the play design team, and seeing cards like this and seeing them have clear, defined archetypes that they've identified as archetypes that they want to see play, and then letting us discover those archetypes and then play with them. They also open the gates for more and more of them to exist while making sure the power level is not so high that we hate our lives, right? You know, I'm really glad this card is on your list. I think that this enables I love enablers that are reasonable, right? Like this is a huge one for me. I'm really glad this is on your list.
Yeah, and I mean, just briefly, if we're talking about it from a design standpoint, having those types of things that are obviously for a particular type of archetype also help bring new players along on understanding more about the game. Like, if it has a clearly defined role, then the players can discover that and they start to see the deeper levels of the game and they start to get excited about it. So I think it's a pretty great thing from a design standpoint.
Yep.
What's up next?
It's yours.
So my next favorite is Flame Sweep, which is a card that's probably not going to be talked about in a lot of set reviews, but it is a red 2 instant. Flame Sweep deals 2 damage to each creature except for creatures you control with flying. Anytime you have, one-sided potential sweepers, or you have things that only affect your opponents, or you have things that only affect certain types of creatures, like I think this card would be cool if it was only 2 damage to each creature except for creatures with flying. But the fact that you can still kill your opponent's flying creatures, this is a fun card. I think this is something that's a really interesting tool to have in your arsenal as far as a sweeper is concerned. I compare this and think about like Whip Flare as a comparative card, but this is an instant sweeper that only is one-sided, and it's something that I'm really excited about.
Whip Flare mirrors fun. I don't know that I'm going to see that if Whip Flare mirrors is fun.
I'm going to burn all your stuff.
I don't know what a Whip Flare is. So.
Whip Flare is this card, but it doesn't hit artifacts.
And it costs 1 less mana.
Oh, Pyroclasm.
It's Pyroclasm that's one-sided in the Tempered Steel mirror, and it was so annoying.
Yeah, but this card's great, especially as someone who played a lot of decks in the last format who only had creatures that fly in them. This is something that I would have played a lot of.
Yeah, I really like this. And like, I know that they've tried to introduce a dragon deck, and like things just are missing for it. But I do think it's cool that like I can play this in my flyer deck against something like Mono Red, and then it doesn't contribute to the damage, so that they can burn things out. To like,
that's right.
Like I really like that.
Yeah, I think it's a cool card overall. That's why it's on my favorites list. What is your last favorite, Spencer?
So this is a card that I was a little bit surprised existed, but then I don't know if it was Andrew Brown that tweeted it. It was either him or Donald. We're just talking about making more cards like Treasure Map. And they said, look out for the coming sets. You're going to see a couple of them. And I think this card and Bag of Holding actually really fit into that, as well as the Chandra artifact. But yeah, the card that we're talking about is going to be Icon of Ancestry. It's 3 mana for an artifact that when it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. Creatures you control with a chosen type get +1/+1. And then you can pay 3 and tap it to look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card of the chosen type from among them and put it into your hand. And then you put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Why?
You got to shuffle those 2 cards. Shuffle them up.
Anyway, it
Run it
takes
back.
1 second to click 2 cards on Arena.
It
Let's
can't
just
be. It can't be
dumb.
stupid. It's your favorite.
Anyway,
You guys suck. I just always hit 3 cards that are the same type. I don't have to deal with this. Bop, bop, bop.
you only reveal 1.
Oh, you can only get 1? I've literally never activated the card. It's been in a lot of my decks on Arena in the last couple days, or the last 2 days, I should say, and it's been amazing, just as a Lord effect. So
Yeah, I mean it already being Glorious Anthem for your deck is like really good, and then the fact that late game it like lets you cycle through your deck. If they wrath you in your deck that plays Glorious Anthem, you just get to draw cards. I think the card is not being talked about enough as just like a really really powerful role player that enables any type of these decks. You know, Dinosaurs. This is a card that is really that's a deck that's really really weak against wrath effects. Specifically, I think that some of the other decks are a little bit better than them against them, but still get the benefit. If you think about something like Vampires, I know that I got crushed by somebody playing this insane Elves deck that they played multiple of these, and I think that the card is just a slam dunk for me as far as something that I think enables so many strategies and something that I want to see in Standard.
I mean, spoiler alert. This is one of my hits. It's on the list. Is that I think the tribal decks are really cool, and I think having things that push tribal is really cool. I think it's always been a fun part of Magic, and having a card like this that just pushes tribal as a general thing and not just a particular tribe is awesome. Really great, really fun, and it does it all.
Yeah. Tribal decks need something like this too. It really lets them, play on an axis that they don't always get to play on. This is something that I'm excited to try out for hopefully all of Standard. I hope that we can find ways to use this.
And speaking about hope, that leads us into our next category, which is hopeful.
Yeah, I think Mason's on tilt because we switched up, by the way.
no, I was gonna change. I was actually gonna change it at the beginning and have us all start one, but
yeah. Okay, well, I'll start this
here
one.
we are.
Yep.
Start us off on hopeful.
You just said I was next, and then he went, and I was like, oh no, did we upset Mason?
No, I'm good. I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I'm on cold medicine, guys. I'm dying over here.
Hydra is my first hopeful. And I'm going to say something that I did not know that I was going to say until 10 minutes before this podcast. I am going to build a creature ramp deck similar to Devotion, and this card is the reason.
What card are we talking about?
Voracious Hydra is green X for an 0/1 Hydra. It has trample. When it enters the battlefield, you can put X counters on it, and then you choose one. You double the number of counters on it, or you have it fight a creature you don't control. So, bridge cards are really, really important in ramp decks. And a bridge card that I was excited about a while back that didn't work out because it was not good enough as a bridge card was Territorial Allosaurus. That card was a 4 mana 5/5 that at 7 mana got to fight something. But in my head, you also put 2 counters on it. So I thought you got a 7/7 that fought something. So I was like wrong on it, but it was still something that I was excited for. This card, you already just like decks literally right now are playing. What is the name of the card? The Raptor.
Ripjaw Raptor?
Yeah, they're literally just playing Ripjaw Raptor in their sideboard for mono red because their mono red matchup is that bad. They not even for anything other than like a 4/5 body with a little bit of value. This card is better than that in a lot of those decks, especially the Bant ramp strategies. Like they're playing Ripjaw Raptor because their mono red matchup is bad, and this card just is better just all the time in that deck. I am so excited to play with this card.
I think this card is really dope. And any interest in pairing this with the Hydra Lord, Gargos, the Vicious Watcher?
No. But it does if you do want to think about like if you want to compare a deck to something like the green red Devotion decks of the past, Leafkin Druid tapping for 2 mana when you have more creatures in a deck that plays ramp creatures alongside some of those other ones might be an interesting inclusion in those decks now that you wouldn't have thought to play in other cases. So anyway, I'm really excited about this. Any thoughts on this one, Mason?
I think it's strong. I think you hit on everything that I was thinking of. So
Dope. Should we go on to your
Sure.
next hopeful?
So my next hopeful, well, my first hopeful I should say, is Cavalier of Night. It is 2 black, black, black for a creature elemental knight, 4/5. It has lifelink, and when it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, destroy target creature an opponent controls. And then whenever Cavalier of Night dies, you may return target creature to convert mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This card seems really powerful. Even just with the Tombbound Lich we talked about earlier, you could play that, discard something, draw a card. Then on the next turn, you could sacrifice it to kill off a bigger creature of theirs, kill off one of their more powerful, like maybe a Riftjar Raptor that's blocking the way, right? They just have main deck because they have bad mono red, whatever. The fact that it's lifelink helps you stabilize. I'm not 100% sold on this one like I am the other Cavaliers I talked about, but I think this one's really strong, and I'm really hopeful that's going to see play.
Cool. I don't have an opinion on this one. The 4/5 lifelink body that can let you, I mean, the sacrifice clause is the most interesting thing to me. Having something that bridges you late, like gets you that extra bonus in some of those style of decks is kind of where I see this card. But
It's also very good, like with the blue black reanimate stuff we talked about, like the treachery creature. Like you bring it back, steal something on the next turn. You play this, kill that, kill their thing. Then you try to draw another one eventually. So
yeah,
and those decks
kind of the same thing as the treachery creature if you think about it.
Yeah. As long as
No,
you're sacrifice.
It's a card that I'm excited about as well. Like, it does a lot of different stuff, and if they keep giving us sacrifice outlets, eventually maybe there's going to be a sacrifice deck that works.
For sure.
We'll see.
My first hopeful is along the same lines of something that would likely want to be in that deck is Rotting Regisaur, which we talked a little bit last week, is black and 2. It's a zombie dinosaur. It's a 7/6 vanilla creature. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, discard a card. This card's just gigantic for a very low amount of mana, and it gets in there. And if you're discarding your other things that you're wanting to have in your graveyard for reanimation targets, then that's a lot of possible things that are going on. Something that's also worth noting is that this does come back from Gruesome Menagerie. So if you wanted to have this as a 3-drop in your black-red aggressive Judith deck, like that's something that's you could have considering. I'm hopeful that this card is good because it's dope and it does a lot of things that I want to see happen. Also, I think that it's worth considering as a sideboard card for Hogak decks.
Wow. Okay. There was going to be a podcast on the network at one point we were considering called Why Is This a Card? Where it was literally going to be like a 10-15 minute podcast where Casey and I would go over magic cards and say, why is this a card? This card would have been one of the cards we talked about. Why in the world do you need a 7/6 for 3 mana that lets you discard cards for free? And people are like, no, it's a drawback. No, it's not. It is not a drawback. It is not. And this card is dumb. And
This is a card because I hate your ley lines, and I want you to know it.
This card is dumb. And I don't appreciate it. And the number of times I'm going to die to the 7/6 without its second ability mattering is going to be a lot. And the number of times I'm going to die to its second ability because I spent all my resources killing the stupid 7/6 is also going to matter. And I don't like that.
Be at my hand.
I don't like that, Trey. I ain't about this life.
So I'm hopeful that I can bring the zombie dinosaur to come and visit everyone. What is your next hopeful, Spencer?
But Mason didn't say anything.
I said everything I had to say about that card last week. I stand by what I said last week. It's very powerful. Like, I don't know if it's good enough, but I'm pretty sure it will be close to good enough at worst. And I am pretty much sold on the Hogak thing in the side. Well, maybe not actual Hogak, but like Hogak style decks. Decks that are weak to ley line. Seems like a powerful card.
Yeah, my next hopeful is Shifting Ceratops. It's 2 green for a 5/4 can't be countered dinosaur protection from blue. You can pay a green, and it gains your choice of reach, trample, or hasten till end of turn. Mason, what were you gonna say?
But I'm just so surprised this isn't on your hit. I didn't put it on my hit because I was like sure it was going to be your hit. Keep talking.
I mean, like, I think dinosaurs actually needs to be a deck for this to be a hit. Otherwise, it's probably relegated to the sideboard in some way.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think a hit can be in the sideboard. Maybe that's just a different philosophy there.
Sure.
Yeah, I think
No,
this
that's
card's
fine.
just crazy.
Just said it was the standard defining cards not even an hour ago.
Yeah, no, a card in the sideboard can define things
That's
like
fair.
Dovin Veto changes that if you can play counter spells along with Teferi. Also, this card's so good against Teferis.
Yeah, so good. Also, if you want to talk about a reason that you should never play a Ripjaw Raptor again in your life, Shifting Ceratops.
I think that you play both of them alongside my I forgot I removed it. Are we not going to talk about the card that I thought we were going to talk about? It's on nobody's list.
Nah, I don't have Marauding Raptor on my list.
What?
Nah, the card's good.
We talked about it last week.
We talked about it last week. I don't think it's a hit, in my opinion. I think it's very good. And it might become a hit as time goes on, but with what I have right now, it's good. Also, thought one of y'all would take care of it. It'd be like that sometimes.
Yeah, it'd be like that sometimes. I think this card, along with that card, gives you the perfect number of high impact 4-drops to play with your Marauding Raptor. Very impressed.
Yeah. Card's good. I think it's good with, we're talking about it with dinosaurs where, you have Raptor and you can curve on turn 3. I think you can just play it as a 4/5. I think you can just main deck it.
5/4 even.
I'm sorry, 5/4, yeah. I think you can just main deck it. And you will be happy.
It's a big creature. And it's interesting, this reminds me of when Fairies was very popular because you had hate cards that were clearly printed to deal with that deck. And Esper midrange, this is clearly a card that's targeted at being against that deck.
It's also
this is something that exists for that reason.
It's so good against Esper. It's so good against mass manipulation or Bant Ramp decks, right? It's also
being good against those stupid blue steel spells for your green deck is really big. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, having that instead of Ripjaw Raptor, where you bring in your Ripjaw Raptor because you're I gotta attack them. I gotta put something in play on turn 3 off my Elf for Paradise Druid, and instead having it hit them every turn. Really, really big. And if Mono Blue ever comes back, how do they beat this? It hits them for 5. It blocks everything. It can't be countered. It slices, it dices, it does it all. So I think this card is crazy strong. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think this one's really good. Trey, what was your next hopeful?
It's a Planeswalker, a Johnny Strength of the Pride, which is white 2. It comes in with 5 loyalty. It has a +1. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you control plus the number of Planeswalkers you control. And then -2, create a 2/2 white cat soldier that is a Johnny's Pride mate. And which is whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then it has a 0 ability. If you have at least 15 more life than your starting life total, so if you're at 35, you can exile this and a Johnny Strength of the Pride and each artifact and creature your opponents control. So it's a life gain spell. It makes a Johnny Pride mates. It one-side wraps your opponent if you've already gained life. This card does a lot of different things, and there does seem to be a sub-theme of a lot of different life gain options. There's a lot of life gain in vampires. There's a lot of life gain in angels. There's a lot of different things like that going on. The card of Johnny's Pride mate is itself still legal, so you can play that and this that makes more Johnny's Pride mates.
It is also legal after a rotation. You might not have realized because nobody plays with the really crappy art from War of the Spark that it is in War of the Spark.
Yes, they did want it to be around for this Ajani to be here, seemingly. But, this card is interesting. I don't know whether or not this is going to be good enough, but, it makes 2/2s. It gains life. It, can wrap things. It does a lot of different kinds of things. I am hopeful that this card is there because I think that life gain-centric strategies are really interesting. And I am excited about the possibility of this card.
Yeah, I think that if there was I'm going to be honest, this almost made my hit list. I think this is just an insanely powerful Planeswalker. If you think about the white decks and how they were constructed and the debate between the life game versions and the non-life game versions, I actually think this card actually just ends the debate. I think that's how powerful this card is. I think that it immediately comes in and creates one of the best creatures in your deck. And then if you have something like a Healer's Hawk, you just have a 3/3 protecting your Planeswalker, which is huge. You will also have a plus ability to make that and your previous Ajani Pride mates and your other life gain stuff matter even more. You're going to be gaining a ton of life with this. I have very little doubts that this is one of the better cards in the set, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I think that it's interesting because like a Johnny Tyrant of Heroes was something that we saw in the white decks as a sideboard option to bring back creatures. So instead of bringing back creatures, you always make a Pride Mate. But if you build your deck where you always want a Pride Mate, then it is better a Johnny because you don't have to have drawn a Pride Mate and had it die.
Yeah, and it's really funny. I was thinking the exact same thing, and I was also thinking how weird it was that this Sorin and that all occupy that slot and all have a very similar minus ability.
Yeah. It seems like something they're kind of liking in Planeswalkers right now. It's kind of like the old, plus draw a card, minus protect itself on a 5-mana one. Right now we got minus bring a homie back. I think that card's powerful.
I mean, I think this one competes in a spot with the Ajani that we have presently, but doesn't compete with a slot with Sorin. Like, it's like best friends with Sorin.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, the tick up, making your Johnnies stronger, is very powerful. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say on the card. How about you, Spencer?
No, so what's the next hopeful there, Mason?
The last one here is Chandra, Acolyte of Flame. For one,
which Chandra is that?
One red Chandra is 4 loyalty. It has 2/0 abilities. The first is you put a loyalty counter on each red planeswalker you control. Very cool. Its second one is create 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. They gain haste. Sacrifice them at the beginning of your next end step. And -2, you can target a instant or sorcery card from your graveyard that's converted to make cost 3 or less, and then you may cast it exiled instead. Fun fact, I learned about this before we went live. It does not work if your opponent has Teferi in play, little Teferi. If you minus on the instant or sorcery, you cannot cast it because of how Teferi works, because it's a fun intuitive magic card. I like this card a lot, though. It does a lot of really cool things. So one, it accelerates all your red planeswalkers, right? So its take up ability doesn't really do anything if you don't have another walker, but that's kind of cool with the other Chandra. It lets you play big Chandra, take this up, and then minus for more on a creature, which can be really cool. You can take up your boluses, which happened to me. The Grixis deck, sometimes they just run out of spells in hand. So the fact that your other minus lets you bring back spells from your graveyard is really nice. And it plays really well at pressuring Little Teferi, because if they play Little Teferi and just minus to draw a card, or minus bounce your Steamkin, you can play this, kill the Little Teferi, and hit them. So I think this card's really, really close to being good enough. And you can also play in elemental decks to double up on removal spells. If you have Risen Reef in play, you trigger twice. Spencer, you have a question?
Oh, I have a comment. I was wrong about this card.
Yeah?
I thought this card was garbage.
Yeah?
I thought this card was unplayable garbage. And then I saw the Risen Reef light.
Yeah?
And I saw the light. And I literally almost cut all of these from my deck before trying it. And I think it is the perfect 2 of in your Chandra Elemental deck. You can go check out the video on our YouTube channel to see me playing that deck, as well as see the deck list over in our Constructed Critics group, where I will be talking about it a lot over the next 2 weeks as I fully plan to try and work on it and play it for Denver if it's viable.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to say. Making 2 elementals, then plussing with your other 4-mana Chandra so that there are 3 ones, while also having another elemental creature in play that gives your elementals +1/+0. When there are 2 ones, just 2 ones with what is the name of the card?
I don't know its name. It's the red-green elemental lord.
Yeah, the red-green elemental, the creeping trailblazer. Just that alone, way more powerful than I expected.
Yeah, the fact they have haste and can attack immediately when you play this is powerful. It doesn't protect itself in a traditional way, but this card doesn't play in traditional ways. So
yeah, but I mean, also the fact that even in just a red deck, the fact that you can cast burn spells with it as soon as you play it, where you can make 1/1s, and then it can also build itself back up by just taking turns off to just put loyalty counters on itself to just keep going.
Or also build up your Tybalts,
Right.
So
yeah, I think this card is relevant even in that deck as well.
Yeah, the card is very powerful. I think it's going to see a lot of play. I also think it could see play in Modern, and I don't know if Legacy's at a point where this is playable. It seems hyper efficient right now, more so than normal, but I could see it seeing play in older formats for sure.
I'll just tell our podcast listeners, this card flashes back Chandra's Triumph.
That's right, Chandra's Triumph. It's where we're at. Can I kick her fire with this card?
I don't think it flashed. There's only 2 drops, right?
It's 3 or less.
3 or less. I believe the answer would be yes.
Sweet. I have that in my Teamer Elemental deck, and I just assumed it would work, and I thought now would be a good time to ask.
I would assume it would work also.
I
Sweet.
believe so, yes. Because it's an additional cost and not an alternate cost.
Fun fact: if you, for some reason, have, something like Pulse of Marasa, you could also flash that back, which I didn't think about. And I don't know that any deck that you board in Pulse of Marasa can be the second one, so that seems powerful.
Get back my Risen Reef. Can I start off favorites, by the way, with the card we hinted at, and it's clearly the best card in the set, Risen Reef?
You mean hits, right?
Yeah, that's hits. Well,
talk about hits.
This is everything, baby. This is Risen Reef. This is what we want to do in Magic. This is a blue and a green for a 1/1 creature elemental.
So we're below the vanilla rate at 1/1 for 3 mana. It's not a good rate.
Are we though?
Just for the record, for those at home, those at home, 1/1 for 3 is below the vanilla rate. Just so you know.
I'm just saying, Wood Elves. Come on, is that below the? No, I'm just kidding.
It is better. Every comparison I've ever heard to this card, by the way, it is better version of, which is kind of scary to me. Anytime that happens, I'm always like, whoa.
This is better Wood Elves.
It's like better Wood Elves. When Risen Reef or another element enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If you have a land, if it's a land, you put it in play, and if it's a spell, you put it in your hand. I said it earlier, just wanted to reread since it's been 40 minutes. Risen Reef is insane. It is an insane value engine. It makes it so you're ramping to your bigger spells against the aggressive decks. It makes it so that you're drawing spells against control decks and aggressive decks. So that way, you're always having gas. Risen Reef works in multiples. Risen Reef is the reason to play an elemental deck right now, whether that be Sultai, whether that be Teamer, whether that be blue-green. I don't know if you have enough for blue-green, but maybe. Elementals are very powerful. This is probably the new Rogue Refiner, and it's probably better than Rogue Refiner if you don't count energy synergies. So this card is very strong. I could talk about it for hours, so I'm going to stop myself.
I could also talk about it for hours. I have very little, like, after seeing everybody talking about having the same experience that I was having with the deck that I was playing on stream yesterday, I have very little doubts that I won't be playing that in Denver.
Yeah, I mean, like, it would have to be because everyone is, like, adapted to it and they realize it so quickly.
Within the first week.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Denver's the first standard. There will be one standard event before it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the card does a lot of things, and it's a very powerful engine card. And, I do think that there's at least a thing with the streaming events and things that have been happening so far is everybody's trying to do sweet stuff. And with everybody trying to do sweet stuff, a lot of that means that they're doing, like, slower stuff, they're doing weird stuff, they're looking at new interactions, and the deck lists aren't very efficient. I know that there was a lot of vampire decks that were there that you're having to play against and that kind of thing, but I'm concerned of whether or not a 3-mana 1/1 is good enough overall. The card is very powerful if you don't interact with it.
Yeah,
but it dies to literally everything.
So I will give you a counterpoint, and one thing I wanted to say on it anyways, and so it kind of works together, is that what I was going to say about this card is that this card, I combined, so my whole list, if you didn't notice, I have like 8 elemental cards on my list. Like basically everything but the Uggs. Even the Ugg references elementals with Chandra. I think the thing is there. I think there are a lot of tools for it, and all the cards that work together do this thing of allowing you to play Magic. They make it so your deck always performs. Risen Reef is a lot like the Explore creatures in that way, where you always hit your land drops. So unlike the Explore creatures, you always get a card out of it, and sometimes you get a land immediately, which is generally better in the early game than having a land in hand. And the fact that it works in multiples and triggers later in the game makes it so it has the potential to snowball. I would consider playing this card if it was just on ETB for itself in an elemental deck. I don't know if it would be good enough there, but we would consider it. But the fact that it allows for multiples allows it for it to snowball. The fact that it works in multiples of itself. I'm talking about multiple instances, sorry. Multiples of itself as well lets it get really out of hand. And the fact that your deck just lets you play Magic between this and the Explore package in the same deck potentially is really, really good if your goal is to always play Magic.
I think we'll be talking about the Omnath Risen Reef Elemental package for a while.
Yeah. I would be also very surprised if when rotation happens, if it's competing now, a lot of the stuff I'm looking...
The deck I posted has one card that rotates. One card. It's Llanowar Elves. Nothing else but the lands rotate, and you won't be playing Llanowar Elves anymore, so you can just play Temple of Mystery instead of those lands.
Yeah, I mean, I think the deck is very powerful. Uh, if it can compete with Sultai and Dreadhorde and Esper, I still need to get proven. But I was playing some before we got started with a friend on Arclight Phoenix, which is a very proactive deck, and I did lose some. We were only playing game one just because I didn't know when we were going to start, but I I was holding my own against it, and the Cavaliers also generating value. It's just all your creatures have an instance of generating value, and in a world with Teferi being one of the marquee cards, this is a great way to punish Teferis. If your game plan against my Teferi, against my deck, is to bounce my Risen Reef and let me redo it, that's cool. We allow that plays. So let's move on to someone else's favorite. Spencer.
Yeah, yeah, I can. I literally want to talk about this card more and the deck more. So I just read Chandra's Embercat for the first time, and now I'm like even more excited about my life. So,
Well, Spencer, what's your first hit?
yeah. So I think my first hit is. I think that this is one of those cards that I expect will just see standard play. I don't think that it will be an all-star. I don't think. I think that it just does everything and is kind of perfect to see standard play. That's Vivian Arcbow Ranger. It's 1 green for a Vivian Planeswalker. Comes with 4 loyalty. You can +1 to distribute 2 counters among up to 2 creatures. I want to say that it's among up to 2 creatures, so you can put 2 counters on 1 creature, which is pretty powerful. They also gain Trample until end of turn, which I don't know why that's true. And then, so it actually pressures opposing Planeswalkers, I think is why that's really important. And it pressures them pretty well. And then you get -3 to deal target damage to target creature or Planeswalker. So once again, dealing with Planeswalkers in your green deck.
Equal to target creature's power.
Equal to target creature's power. And so it doesn't fight it, it just does it.
Yeah.
Being just another great way to deal with opposing Planeswalkers and opposing creatures, being more removal in your deck. And then its -5 is actually really sweet. You can choose a creature card you own from outside the game, reveal it, and put it into your hand. People keep saying this card has a bad ultimate, and I just don't see that as an ultimate. I think you just get to do that sometimes, and you get to take one of your more powerful cards that you probably have in your sideboard out of your deck and have it in your hand.
You mean like shifting Ceratops?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's my main deck.
Against the Esper decks or the blue decks or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this card's just really powerful. Like, I think there's a reason it costs triple green, and it's because if it costs double green, it would be too good.
Yeah, we talked about it a bunch last week. So
yeah, I think that this card is strong, and I agree with you that I think it is a hit. It's just, but you're right. The casting cost is a thing that's going to limit its involvement in some decks.
Yeah, it's going to need to be played in a 2-color deck. I don't think that maybe the Bant decks, because they play like Llanowar Elves or stuff like that, could afford to play a triple green spell. But like, I don't know that like. I don't know, maybe the creature ramp decks could afford to play it, but I don't think outside of those it'll see much play in 3-color decks. I think that you'll be relegated to 2 colors and have a primary color be green.
Yeah, I agree with that. Trey, what's your favorite first hit?
I'm going to just go ahead and hit both of mine since we've talked about one of mine already, which is the Icon of Ancestry, which is the artifact lord that also will let you tutor things back up off the top of your deck. I think the card's great. We've talked about it a bunch. I don't know that we need to go over it again. But it pairs very well with my other hit, which is Sorin Imperious Bloodlord, which is a black and 2 Planeswalker, comes in at 4 loyalty. +1, target creature you control gains Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. If it's a vampire, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Significant. That's not until end of turn. That's a counter. Also, +1, you may sacrifice a vampire. When you do, Sorin Imperious Bloodlord deals 3 damage to any target and you gain 3 life. And then -3, you may put a vampire creature card from your hand onto the battlefield.
So protection clause.
What's that?
It's an interesting way to protect a Planeswalker. I kind of like it.
Yeah, it's nice, and it's like this design space for Planeswalker has been good. Where you're talking about kind of like with Vivian, right? This doesn't have an ultimate that you're building towards. This just has different utility things that you can do. But so this card has the possibility of ramping you if you have any of the more expensive vampires, which is normally something you wouldn't have done because you're kind of punished for playing them. But this like frees you up to kind of put some more of those options into your deck. This has reach because if the board stalls up, fine, you just start sacking your vampires and draining your opponent. This can build your army up to get out of hand, but you're just giving them Death Touch and Lifelink, which makes them almost impossible to deal with in combat. And your opponent just can't continue to take them because they're getting bigger every time. Like This card just does it all, and I think is the thing that's going to make vampires a real potential player going forward.
Yeah, I like that this only gets to be in standard with what's his name for one set.
There's a lot of vampires that it's only with one set, so I have no clue.
The one that you pay for life to make
Adanto.
Yeah, I'm glad this is only with Adanto for one set.
Yep. Also, can I comment on that real quick since we stole a little time from Trey? I hear this a lot where it's like, oh, I really hate that they put cards in core sets that only work with other cards for like 3 months. And like, why didn't they just do that sooner when the cards first came out? Sometimes they just didn't know and they thought something might be good enough. And then they see it's not and they design cards for it. And sometimes it just be like that, fam. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, I'm seeing the reverse. I'm really glad.
I know, but some people are the opposite of what you just said. They get really frustrated that like they only get Marauding Raptor and dinosaurs for 3 months, or this and vampires for 3 months.
To be fair on the Marauding Raptor point, because I saw a lot of people saying that, doesn't the 3-mana dinosaur that got banned deal damage to your own creatures?
No, it deals damage to players. That's why it's banned. It's because you can't gain life, and every time you play a creature, you lose a life.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has menace.
The mid-range red dinosaur creature was banned, so it wasn't like there wasn't a creature to fill that role. It just you couldn't play it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
yeah, my last hit is we'll let Spencer have the last one since he was out last week. Is Legion's End. One in a black. One in a black for a sorcery. Exile a target creature an opponent controls with a converted mana cost 2 or less, and all other creature that player controls with the same name as that creature. Then that player reveals their hand and exiles all cards with that name from their hand and graveyard. This card is the new Bile Blight, as I have tried to, kind of pair it to. It kills all the early creatures. One thing I do want to know is people are like, what card is this supposed to stop? I don't understand. Is there something in the Future League? It's called Legion's End, and then there's Legion's Landing, which makes a bunch of vampires that are in the card art. So it's there to stop the vampires. And then it kills all the tokens, kills all the Hydroid Crasises, and removes them from the game, kills all the Wild Growth Walkers, kills all the Merfolk Branch Walkers. I think this card is just totally reasonable as a card. I think it's going to see a lot of play. Also, the fact that you get to see their hand, even if they don't have anything, is really nice. If you're like a controlling deck and you just want to be able to answer, you have a problem with creatures that go wide. Excuse me, and there are a lot of creatures that do that. Then this card lets you answer that and know what's in their hand, so you can play around stuff going forward. I think it's just a very good card.
I just want to say that you're going to win 100% of games when you target a 2-mana creature with this, like a Wild Growth Walker, and then exile a Wild Growth Walker from their hand. They're just gonna be like, "Oh, I lost this game."
Yeah, you just can't beat that kind of stuff, and that kind of stuff's gonna happen. And against red decks, sometimes they keep hands that are like some land Steamkins in a frenzy, and you're just like, hit your Steamkin because I have to.
Killing a Steamkin is just light them up, baby.
What if they go? How many times have you played against mono red and you're on the draw and they go turn 1 Lava Runner, turn 2 Lava Runner, right? Just in the game. Yeah, and even if they go Lava Runner, Fanatical Firebrand, you still just answered 2 cards. Very powerful. Also, answering all the tokens I think is important if there's a token strategy.
And I know you mentioned it, but hitting all of the X things too, hitting Krasis, hitting Voracious Hydra, there's going to be big game as well.
That's right. If you are in Utah, Week 1 standard event at Oasis Games, bring this to get Spencer's Voracious Raptors.
There will be no Voracious Hydras in my Week 1 standard deck.
Oh, by the way, it dodges. Risen Reef dodges this card, so we're safe, fam. We're good.
We get an errata.
Yeah. Converted creature mana cost 2 or less, and or a Risen Reef.
So my final hit is, I think it's just a hit. Chandra Awakened Inferno. It's card we already talked about. I already kind of mentioned why. But I want to say that I'm really glad when these type of cards exist in Standard. I know it's Mason's, but I think this card has an interesting play to it, and it allows for a different type of red deck to exist. When all of the ramp stuff and all of the bear stuff in your teamer based or green red based decks are green stuff, or you have to go into black to help you out and stuff. You kind of get this weird tug and pull that I think that red offers. Team red is my favorite color combination, and green red is my second favorite color combination. This card just does a lot of things for those decks that you don't always get, and I'm really, really happy that this card exists, as it lets me do things that I like to do in Magic. Having a 6-mana spell that stabilizes the board or allows me to answer problematic things. That's just kind of what I'm looking for in a card.
Yeah, this card is very clearly very powerful. It's going to define Standard, in my opinion, and you're going to be ugging it if you're not playing it. It's going to beat you a large portion of the time.
I thought that your 2-life example was really interesting. Do you not think that it's reasonable to play this plus it dies, and then you are forced to play differently to make more interesting decision gameplays once you have those shocks on you?
As the opponent?
Yeah.
I mean, it forces. Well, it depends. Is your deck able to make decisions? Because if you are unable to make decisions, then
I just always play mid-range decks, so like I can adjust.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you're always playing mid-range battles, it does. It changes the dynamic of the game for both players, which is cool. If you're playing a control deck, this card ends the game, and if you're playing an aggro deck, it ends the game because it probably wipes your board twice.
Hey, I like mid-range mirrors, man. Why don't we just play Temur Energy mirrors all the time?
I love Temur Energy mirrors. I'm about to have 2 of them in real life so we can play the mirror. I'm just saying we're in a standard format where all we do is play mid-range mirrors already. For hero matchups.
I would call those are like haymaker mirrors. I wouldn't call them mid-range mirrors.
Sure, I don't know. Are they haymaker decks? I don't know. All I know is that this card is very, very powerful. It's clearly a hit. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, that is going to do it for this week for Pick 2. What was your favorite card in your Pick 2, Mason?
Risen Reef. My entire set review is revolved around Risen Reef.
Card in your Pick 2, Trey?
Rotting Regisaur.
Yes.
Only because it disgusts you.
It does kind of disgust me. It's so annoying. It's one of those cards I know I'm going to lose. It almost made my oath. Yeah, I think my favorite card on mine is definitely, I think it's Vivian Arcbow Ranger. Like, this is just the kind of card that I think should exist and is versatile, and I enjoy playing those. So, well, thank you everybody so much for listening. We're 15 episodes away from 300. It's really crazy to think about how long this podcast has been going. I really appreciate all the listeners along the way. It means so much. I say it means the world to me, and I think people think that I'm joking, but like, if you know me, you know what this podcast means to me.
Yeah, 9 weeks is such a crazy time when you think about it. Like, can you even imagine?
I like that Mason did kind of all of the work he did on the podcast before those 9 weeks.
That was a different chapter. That was a different anime arc.
Now your hair turns blue, and it's just different.
Yeah, it's a different time. I got a beard now. I've grown. I've aged.
Yeah, it's true. You don't look 12 anymore.
That's the most powerful part of the beard is those jokes died. So
they die.
Mm-hmm. They're gone.
All right. Well, let's bring them back.
All right. Cool.
Don't forget that you can check out the rest of the network over on constructivism.com. We've got 10th Street Hooligans coming to the network. We have the new show and Arena Mythicast. You can check out Homeward Path, Common Knowledge, all the things on there. And then YouTube content is up on constructivism.com.
What is 10th Street Hooligans if you don't know what that show is?
Yeah, it's a kind of, I would call it, the thing that's coming to my head is The View, but it's not like The View.
It's like a talk show.
Yeah, it's like a talk show. There we go.
Yeah. Which is what The View is.
Yeah, it's like a talk show, a magic talk show. So now we have multiple interview shows, a talk show, this show about getting better magic than our sister podcast and Common Knowledge, and then something for
official format. Popper, it's a real format now.
Easy, right?
Yeah.
Those guys are crushing it. By the way, if you want to get better at that new official format Popper, you should be checking out that podcast. But also want to give a special shout out to Adam Spain and the things he's doing over at Homeward Path. So.
Yep.
Hashtag would that be good? Hashtag would that be good is our Twitter hashtag that lets you, if you tweet it, Mason will read it. So, Mason, with that being said, what is our first hashtag would that be good?
Our first hashtag would that be good is from our good friend. I believe I'm trying to remember. I think it is Lars here. No, Lars was the Doom Blast from last week. My bad. We only have one this week, according to this, and it is Adam. He tagged Enchantment Alteration, which is a one instance which you move target enchantment from one creature to another, and it's from Luke, who tweeted, "Old cards are the best cards. 412 new toys for the spikes to hone and jank brews like me and see if we can make work a whole new era of MTG Popper waiting to be explored in paper and on MTGO. Thanks, Wizards Magic." So this card, Enchantment Alteration, talking about all the sweet new cards added to Popper. So
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting stuff.
yep, and that seems to be it. That is all I'm seeing on my latest for Twitter. So
That is all I got as well.
What does that have to do with Oubliette? Because that's the only card I care about in Pauper.
ooh, did you hear about all the cards in your deck that got banned, buddy?
No,
Yeah, a lot of your cards are gone, friend.
that's not true.
No, all right, we'll tell you off the podcast. I don't want you to cry.
Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. Don't forget that when you are in the position to top a tournament, that ID is your friend, and you should do it. And we'll see everybody next week.